Coach's Corner this week, we are staying outside of our region for this next edition of Coach's Corner. Last episode, we spoke with John Lilly, the head football coach at Independence. So we made the trip further down south where we are now in Mercer County. We are pleased to be joined this week by the head football coach of the Princeton Tigers, head coach Nathan Tanner. Coach, welcome to the program.
I appreciate you guys having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's kind of just, we'll jump around a lot throughout this, but let's kind of just start here. I mean, there's been nothing short of it. You guys have been a fantastic team to this point. You guys have had a lot of quality wins up to this point. We'll talk about a couple of them here in a second. But just give me your general feel for this team. What's the vibe with this team? What's the energy level with this team as we enter the last couple of weeks of the regular season?
Well, this team is a veteran-led group. We're very senior-heavy, and we have a lot of juniors that contribute as well, handful of sophomores. But it's a very intrinsically motivated group. It doesn't take much to get them up, to work, So they've really embraced the process throughout practice and lifting in the off season, and I would say it's continued, in season. And with that, I think however you practice and prepare is how you're going to play, and that accompanied with talent, makes for a really good mix. So so far, I think everything's really good, and there's a good vibe, throughout the team.
Talk to me a little bit about just this team and the camaraderie that you're seeing with it. You mentioned how it's a lot of older guys with this group. How have those older guys kind of assumed the reins of being the vocal leaders? And since they know this program and you being a first-year head coach, how have they kind of been receptive towards that and just being really coachable towards those younger guys as well?
They seem like a tight-knit group. All of them have grown up with one another. And, a lot of them have played a lot of football snaps together over the past couple years. And as far as, setting an example, whenever I came in, the day one, I tried to set the standard of how we were going to do things, moving forward. And all of those older guys really, really bought in. And, they've been a really good example for all the other guys. There doesn't really need to be much talking that goes on, but just the example that they set day in and day out, it's been good.
So along the line of you being the first-year head coach, what have you learned about this group from where we were the first time you got them to where we are now towards the latter half of October?
I will say one big thing that I've learned is whenever you give this group a set of expectations or objectives to try to accomplish, they really reach for that, and they try to accomplish the things that you set for them. And as a coach, I mean, that's a lot of fun week in and week out. And I think this group from day one to now, they're a much tougher group than whenever I first met them. Mentally, physically, emotionally, that's been really cool to see.
You talked about the toughness aspect of it. How does that kind of how does that blossom? How does that evolve throughout the course of an off season, even leading into the course of a regular season? How does that kind of evolve, and how have you kind of seen that blossom through it all?
Well, the way I would describe it is, I would describe it how you get calluses on your hands or your feet or anything. So, as the coach, I got to find ways to provide moments, whether it be in the weight room or on the practice field, where things are tough. And once you get used to doing tough things at a high level, those tough things don't seem quite as tough anymore. And you produce a callus about yourself, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally, like I said earlier. And you just see it over time. At the very beginning, it's really, really tough. But as time goes on, you see the kids. It's not a tough thing for them, and you see that come out on Friday nights as well.
Let's go back a couple of months to whenever you got this job. Why did you want to make the move from going from Parkersburg South to come down here to Mercer County and come coach at Princeton?
Well, it was a personal decision of mine. Parkersburg South, we had a really good situation for myself and our family. The school was really good to us, and I love those kids and the staff that I worked with, and the community was awesome too. But my wife and myself, we both graduated from Concord University, which is in Mercer County, and we have a lot of friends down here. And I grew up in Pearisburg, Virginia, which is about 30 minutes from here, and my father still lives there. So for me, it was kind of like a homecoming. I'm not from here, but I spent a lot of time in this area, and so it was nice to get back close to family and friends I grew up with and college friends. And There were some people that reached out to me in this community that were connected to Concord and Princeton and just told me to look into it. And me and my wife, we did a lot of praying about it. And, at first, we really weren't sure. But as time went on, it just seemed like a good fit. And we have a 5- and a 6-year-old at home. And we both talked, if we ever did a move like this would be the time to do it. So we ended up pulling the trigger, and here we are.
You talk about how you're not from here, but it kind of just seems like you love being in this area. Like you mentioned, your father still lives about 30 minutes away. Talk about how, as much as the players have been receptive towards you, talk about how this community, this fan base as well, because it's a really passionate fan base, as you can see on Friday nights at Honeycutt Stadium. But just talk about those two things and how have those been kind of not really easy, but just a lot more refreshing, just in the standpoint of not knowing what to expect, and you being a first-year head coach. How's that kind of been helpful?
The way I would explain it is it's a culture thing. Southwest Virginia and Southern West Virginia are both very similar types of people, and I spent the majority of my life down here. And whenever you go back to a community that you once lived in, the transition to fitting in isn't near as steep, I guess you'd say. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of like I said, a homecoming, coming right back to a place I'm really familiar with, and there's a lot of people that I'm familiar with here, and it's been a seamless transition. And too, as far as the community with football, I'm a football guy and I love football, so it's really cool to be a small piece of that, and I'm just grateful for it at the moment.
Going back to your team now, this offense that you guys have assembled, you have some great athletes all across the board. We'll talk about a couple of them here in a second, but just give me a macro with this offense. What stood out to you about this offense, and what's allowed you guys to win a lot of these games handily?
Well, I would say our offense it has the ability to be very balanced. And people look at that in different ways. I'll tell you a few different ways that I'm talking about this balance. As far as run pass goes, we have the ability to do both at a really high level. Our offensive line kind of sets the foundation for that. We have some really athletic kids up front that are really good at pass protection. They're also, I talked about the toughness part. They've become more gritty as time has gone on, and they're really physical and violent. And they're big boys that are athletic. And along with that, at the skill positions, Chance, he's the point guard, of our offense, playing quarterback. He does a great job distributing the ball, however we see fit. And you can go on and on about the other kids. At receiver, we're about 6 deep, but we got 3 or 4 guys that have really produced at a high level. The top 2 are Brad Mosser and Wyatt Klein. Brad, he's really taken off this year. He's been a great player the past several years, but Wyatt Klein, there's been a few times where opponents have bracketed Brad, and he's really flourished and taken games over. In the backfield, it was kind of crazy. We came into week 1, our first string and our second string guy were both out. And our backup quarterback, Jake Belcher, stepped in and played tailback. He's done a fantastic job. And another kid that played slot receiver, we moved him to tailback. That was Alex Cox. He's done a great job. There's some other names that I'm leaving out, but we have a lot of kids that are good football players and find ways to contribute. And we've had a lot of kids make plays on offense.
We could talk on and on about just both sides of the football, but just kind of the same terminology I just used. Give me a macro just in regards to what you think this team still needs to improve on as we enter the latter half of the regular season leading into the state playoffs.
Right now, I would say it's definitely penalties. We have a lot of self-inflicted wounds. At the beginning part of the season, we had too many pre-snap penalties. We've cleaned that up. Now we've had an issue holding, week to week. I don't know the exact stat, but we probably lead the state of West Virginia in touchdowns called back. I know we've had at least 1 called back every game, and there's been a couple games where it's been 2, 3, 4 touchdowns called back. So I think once we get that dialed in and we play a complete ball game, that's something we've yet to do. And as a coach, as the season goes on, you want your team to peak at the end. So that's one thing I think that we can continue to grow on, and just continue to get better at doing what we do as well.
Obviously, Princeton being in AAA, I know you were really familiar with Class Quad A, just in regards to the hierarchies with that, with Martinsburg being the top dog for God knows how long. But now in AAA, you're having to go against, a similar version of Martinsburg, but a lot more run heavy in Bridgeport. Kind of give me your perspective of Class AAA. Now that you've made the move down a class, what stands out to you about this Class AAA field this season?
Something I think that's pretty cool about AAA is there's a lot of parity. Obviously, everybody knows about Bridgeport, but there's 10 teams or so that if you don't bring it on a Friday night, you'll get beat. And I think once the playoffs come around, if we continue to play well and we're lucky enough to get in there, it's going to be a slugfest every week. I think there's going to be some really good matchups, and I tell people from all over the place. I've coached in Virginia, grew up in Virginia. What the top level of West Virginia football is as good as it gets. So, being in AAA, I'm enjoying it, and like I said, the parity is pretty cool to me.
Along that line, what's it going to take for this team to make a late push in the regular season, try and get a high seed come playoff time, and get some momentum going with that could possibly, lead into an appearance in the first weekend of December in Charleston?
This might sound like coach speak, but I really believe in this. I've experienced this as a player and a coach on the good end and bad end. But little things lead to big things. And we tell our kids, if you can't execute little things, then we're not going to be ready for big things to happen. So we got to continue to iron out and get better at the little things. And I think once that happens more consistently, our kids do a good job of it now, but with more consistency, I think that is how we'll be able to make a late push.
Going back real quick to this being your first season, when you first got this job, and give me like the first couple of months even, were you doing a lot more relationship building, or were you doing more establishing the pillars of the identity of what the program was ultimately going to look like?
I would say it was both. The first 2 months were really unorthodox. I was traveling from Parkersburg to Princeton at least twice a week, and I used up a lot of sick days, and I would stay with my father at least once a week. And there were times where obviously we would have weightlifting, and you're spending time with the guys in there, and the way we do things is very, very fast and up tempo, and it has a certain pace to it, and there's a certain way we do our process. But after that would be done, I would stay after and hang out and talk with the guys, and just get to know them, and I tried to be vulnerable with them where they could get to know me as well, and more than anything, just so they knew that I cared about what we were doing. So I was lucky and fortunate enough to get to spend that time with them, to do both of those things, develop some relationships and get the standards in place.
You mentioned something really interesting there that I don't think I've ever heard a coach say, and that is being vulnerable with your players. Obviously coaches, we'll take John Lindley for example. John talked to us about how he's definitely changed how he approaches football. He sits down, he has lunch with his guys, but he didn't mention the vulnerability word. Now granted, he could have, but I'm not saying that he obviously doesn't do that. But hearing that and going further into that, what goes into being a vulnerable coach? Because I think that's a really interesting thing that you brought up. What goes into doing that, and how do you kind of see that helping your kids understand you a lot more?
I think just being real with them and just being transparent. I talked about the travel, and I have a family at home, and I talked a lot about my family and just what it was like traveling back and forth, and just hanging out with the guys. And as far as being vulnerable, if they ask me questions, I just be 100% real with them. And I think with any relationship, whether it be me with football players at Princeton or me with Taylor Kennedy, in order for a relationship to grow, there has to be some vulnerability there.
Do you think, okay, so then along that line then, so do you think you are more of a player-coach relationship guy, or are you kind of more of a coach-player relationship kind of guy? You know what I mean when I'm saying that? The player-coach, you kind of see the player coming more open to you compared to the coach becoming more open towards the player.
I would say I'm a blend of it. I'm a blend of it. I think, and the reason I say that, I'm only 36 years old, but I've been doing it for 15 years too.
Yeah.
So I'm a young coach with an old soul, and the guy that I played for, he was a dinosaur coach. I mean, he started in the 70s, so that's what brought me up, and that was my model. But I also played for Coach Keller, who's at Glenville State now, and I felt like he was like a player's coach. So I saw how he did things as well. So I try to be a blend of both, and you know, I think it's important that you listen to your players whenever they have something to say and something to bring forth. And that's something that's been fun for me. We have a lot of kids here that, you know, in game, they'll tell me stuff and we'll make adjustments on the fly. But at the same token, there's also sometimes where I draw a line. I'm like, hey, this is how it's going to be. So I would say I'm a little bit of both. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, 100% does. So along the lines of a player, let's talk about Brad Mosser, and that's a guy who has been ultra dynamic in just about anything that he does on the football field. I know whenever you guys played Capital Week 1, I know he had that dynamic play where he probably ran like 25 yards backwards and then scored a 35-yard touchdown in the process. But just talk to me about him. What stands out to him about other guys you've been able to coach? Because I know obviously you had Gage right there up at Parkersburg South, who was really dynamic. But just what separates Brad?
First, Brad is uberly competitive, and he has a strong desire to compete at a high level. And with that's something that I've seen. It fuels his work ethic. And something that's been cool for me is he's very coachable. I think sometimes kids like that can be perceived in the wrong way. I had a kid at South that was kind of like that, Cyrus Straw. Some people might be, I don't know, fearful to coach them a certain way, but both of those guys, Brad and Cyrus, but Brad in particular, he likes getting coached and taught, and like I said, he's uberly competitive, and he is a very tough kid too. So all of those intangibles are what makes him special. Obviously, he's fast and quick and great ball skills, but those things, it's more about his heart and who he is. I think that's what makes him special.
One last question before we get you out of here. You know, kind of going back from a macro perspective with this team, who's a guy in your opinion, because we could go on and on about Brad, we can go on and on about Barker as well, your quarterback, but just give me a guy or two that has really has really captured your attention throughout the course of the season and has been really making some big plays for you all this season?
Oh man, that's so tough. But I'm going to go off like who popped in my head immediately. There's two guys in particular. I'm going to add three, maybe four.
Go ahead. Just get the whole roster.
Yeah, it's tough. It's really hard because we got so many kids that are playing well, and I don't want to leave people out. But two skill players that have really, really stood out. Alex Cox, man, you know, coming into the season, I wasn't sure if he would be a varsity player, but I mean, throughout the offseason, every day he would climb up the ladder, and now he's starting tailback for us. You know, he's just tough, really good player, has bought into everything we do. Jake Belcher, he's another one. In July, at one point, he was third or fourth string on offense and defense.
Wow.
And now, you know, he's found ways to start on offense and defense, and he's big in special teams as well. Two guys up front. You know, one, Landon Moore, he has a lot of notoriety because he's a really good player. But, man, he brings it every day, and every Friday he's really good. He's a force. And on the defensive side of the ball, two other linemen, J.D. Meadows and Damian Thomas, man, they've been anchors. A lot of people don't talk about them, but they create a lot of trash to get picked up for our defense. We've been able to play really good team defense because of those guys. But I mean, there's several others, but those guys in particular.
Well, Coach, good luck to you the remainder of this regular season leading into the playoffs, and hopefully we get to see you guys that first weekend of December.
Hopefully so. Thank you.
Absolutely. That's the head football coach of the Princeton Tigers, head coach Nathan Tanner. Be sure to check out our prep football coverage from now until the end of the season in Charleston at Lately Field by going to our website, wvgazettemail.com. Follow us on Twitter at GazMail Sports, that's G-A-Z Mail Sports, and be sure to follow us on Facebook at HD Media Sports.